Hello, and welcome to our video audio podcast, Couched in Color. I'm your mental health expert, teen and young adult crusader, and psychological scientist, Dr. Alfiee. This podcast reflects my life's work, helping our young people and young at heart identify mental health challenges, disrupt negative patterns, and discover the best versions of themselves. I'm so happy that you've joined us. For over 20 years, I want you to know that I've had my finger on the pulse of BIPOC teen mental health. I recognize that historically and currently, with these dual pandemics of COVID and racial injustice raging, our young people are suffering, sometimes they're struggling, and always the care that they need is quite scarce. So each week, I'm joined by young people, mental health experts, celebrities, and influencers to help us uncover the secrets to healing the hearts and minds of our BIPOC teens, their families, and their communities. Here at Couched in Color, we believe deeply in spreading love and light, bolstered by culturally relevant science. So let's dive in. So welcome, everyone. It is always a pleasure to have, I have this guest here. She's like a baby sister to me. She knows that. We both HBCU women. Yes. And it's just a joy for me to have my guest. I know you can't pronounce her last name, so I'm gonna read it for you. Dr. Dr. Dzirasa. Hope I said it right. Look, I'm talking smack, and I might have said it wrong. But Dr. Dzirasa, I would love for her to introduce herself, and then I want to tell you all really quickly, the Couched in Color audience, how I know Dr. Dzirasa. She and I worked together when I was, y'all know, I say I'm a recovering academic. I say it all the time. And part of my recovery, she know the struggle was real. It might not have been for her, but it was real for me. We were at Duke University Medical Center together in the Department of Psychiatry. So Dr. Dzirasa is a psychiatrist by training. She is an MD. And I'm just going to let her introduce herself. And if you could start, Dr. Dzirasa, what we try to do on Couched in Color is, as we bring everybody in and welcome them into the family, we love to hear a little bit about your investment in or journey to working in this space of mental health. So take it away, Dr. Dzirasa. It's an honor to have you here with us.
Well, it's an honor to be here. I'm so honored because Dr. Alfiee, I view her as my sister, as a mentor. It's just been so amazing to look at you as you move through the space, creating space for people like me and others. It's just been such an amazing journey. So I'm grateful to be here today. And also, I don't know if you guys know because see, you can only see Dr. Alfiee from the top up, but let me about Dr. Alfie's shoe collection. Okay, so she was an inspiring and still is an inspiring academic, a researcher, so amazing at speaking and breaking down stigma as it pertains to mental health in the community and Black communities especially. But let me tell y'all about her shoe game. Okay, but I remember seeing her on the way we go into work and she have her little comfy sneakers on in her hands. She
So
would have the
did.
fly shoes, yes, that she stepped into as soon as she walked into that building. And I just remember as a little, a medical student. So that's when I met Dr. Alfiee. I was in medical school at Duke when she was already starting her career. And I just remember being like, I want to be like her. I want to be like her when I grow up. Like, how does she do all of this? She knows her stuff. She's amazing, HBCU grad, and she fly too. I was just like, okay, like yeah, this I'm trying to be like Dr. Alfie. So, anyways, all that to say, she is a mentor in so many ways, and I'm just so grateful to know you, Dr. Alfie. So, a little bit about myself. So, as Dr. Alfie mentioned, I am a psychiatrist. I went to medical school. I guess my journey began way back when I was about 5 years old. And I actually met one of my dad's friends who was a pediatrician. And I remember going to visit her with my own little doctor's kit. And I did her, I did her blood pressure on her forearm. I don't know what I was thinking, but I had my little kit and I met her and I just decided, you know what, I want to be a doctor. Since the age of about 5, I've
Wow.
been saying that. Now, I thought I wanted to go into pediatrics.
Okay.
And it wasn't until I got to medical school and I realized, oh, I don't know if I really want to look in ear all day. So the cases seemed to just interest me were those that were a little bit more complicated, where
Yeah.
maybe there was $1 million workup for some kind of GI or stomach issue, only to
Yeah.
find out that it was anxiety. I was like,
Mm,
oh, this is kind of cool.
mm,
So during my medical school training, I actually took a year off just to explore. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. And I figured, well, let me just get a little bit more exposure and experience in child psychiatry before I make any big decisions. And that's when I met you that year. I was able to do some shadowing and doing some research with John March, Dr. John March, who is an amazing psychiatrist who really broke a lot in the treatment of OCD, pediatric OCD. So we had some really great experiences there at Duke. And I figured, you know what, this is it. I want to go into child psychiatry. So stayed on at Duke and did residency and a child and adolescent psychiatry fellowship. And during my fellowship, I did some additional training in eating disorders. Didn't really expect to go do this, but it was just something I figured as a child psychiatrist, I probably should know a little something about eating
mhm.
disorders, and was surprised to see that, oh wow, eating disorders actually can impact lots of different people. It's not just I think I had my own biases
Yeah.
when I went into it, thinking that eating disorders only really impact, white, young women, affluent women. If you Google eating disorders, those are going to be the images you see. So I came in with my own ideas about what that was, and I had to check myself and learned a little bit more that actually it's so much more than that.
Yeah.
So after my fellowship, then I did a year on as faculty at Duke, and realized I was not about the academic life either.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so I left and did a couple of different gigs and landed at an eating disorder hospital where I served as the medical director for the child and adolescent hospital. And then a couple of years after that, decided to branch out and start a private practice, a group practice with two of my colleagues called Catalyst Therapeutic Services. And we're still up and running in Durham, North Carolina. And in my free time, I serve on a few committees on race and ethnicity and equity. And I also am on the board for Project O, and I can tell you a little bit more about that later. So yeah, and then on the side, I teach a little yoga, so little balance.
This girl ain't got no time. Your calendar is full and your schedule is full like 24/7. I'm trying to figure out when does homegirl sleep, right?
I,
Because that's a lot.
I sleep because I tell my patients sleep is the foundation of everything.
Ooh,
So
child.
I have to sleep. So I
Good.
try to practice what I preach, and I do get as much sleep as I can with the new puppy because I did get a new puppy and he keep me up
What
sometimes.
kind of puppy is it?
Cavapoo.
Oh, girl, that's my next dog. I have a golden doodle, and we were out one day, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, and this girl had a baby. I think it might have been two. She had just gotten it, 2 months old, and I thought I was gonna melt. Those are the cutest little dogs in the world.
So cute, so cute. So mine is 4 months old, so he's still sleeping quite through the night
Yeah.
completely, about 4 or 5 hours.
Okay. Okay.
So I try to
Oh,
get in other ways. He is super cute. He's not here right now because he is truly a puppy, and
okay. I was
a
gonna
little bit
say I don't
hot.
hear no noise. How you do that?
I had to, I had to give my
Okay.
mom the box.
Okay. Ooh, girl, yeah, because mine is right up under my desk. And generally, like, she knows the drill. And so when I'm recording, I think they're so smart. Like anything mixed with a poodle, them dogs are like super smart. They're like geniuses. And so I think she kind of knows in general. I literally bought it. So like, I feel like I know I'm so extra. I bought her just like with them shoes. I bought her a baby bed, not a puppy bed, and it's under the
Mhm.
desk. So she
Oh,
can be under the desk, like at my feet when because I sit in the front of the computer so much all day. So anyway, we're not even gonna get into all that. But I know your puppy is adorable. But one thing you said that really just grabbed me, and it's something I really would love for us to dive into, and that is eating disorders
wow.
in diverse communities because I'm like you. I think to this day, I still have this perception when we talk about eating and I've had patients who have children and grandchildren with eating disorders, but all of those patients have to be honest, with the exception of one, have been white.
Ah,
Kind of middle, upper middle class. And so it's really fed my stereotypes about eating disorders. Now, men can have eating disorders. It's generally my experience has been women, but men can have them. And clearly, with any kind of mental health concern or illness, mental illness, it doesn't discriminate. So anybody can be subject to it. So can you talk with us a little bit about what your experience has been in this space and educate us some? Maybe I would love for you to talk about maybe the major eating disorders that you encounter, and then just give us some insight into how these things show up and manifest in different populations of people.
Absolutely. So lots of good questions there. So first of all, just to give everyone a lay of the land, eating disorders are a group of disorders that can impact how people see their bodies. It can impact how they eat, their relationship with their bodies, and their relationship with food. And it can manifest in many different ways. There actually are several different types of eating disorders. The one that we all tend to hear about and see the most is anorexia nervosa, right?
Yeah.
And usually we see those images. I know for myself, I see like a really thin white woman who, again, is maybe an athlete, form or ballerina, dancer.
Mhm. Mhm.
We've seen a lot of movies, right? We've
Mhm.
seen it in social media. We see it in the magazines. But the reality is that that's only one type of eating disorder. We also see bulimia nervosa. So the difference between those two, with anorexia, you can essentially restrict the amount of nutritional intake that you have,
Okay.
the point where you don't get adequate nutrition, to the point where you start losing weight, and it can be very deadly. It can actually
Mm.
lead to a lot of medical complications. Essentially, our body breaks down if we're not getting enough nutrition, and our heart also, it's protein. Our body will
Yeah.
eat away at itself,
Oh.
even to the point where the heart becomes super weak, stops pumping
Mm.
that it needs to. So sometimes these individuals may suffer from cardiac issues, or another thing that they experience are high suicide rates.
Mm.
So that's anorexia nervosa. Bulimia
Okay.
nervosa is characterized by a combination of excessive eating, or what we call binge eating.
Mhm. Mhm.
Binge is when you eat an excessive amount of food,
Mhm.
short period of time, and you feel completely out of control. Usually it's done in hiding, it's done in secret, and it usually is associated with some sort of fear, shame, guilt,
Mhm.
depression, sadness that can lead to compensatory behaviors such as
Mm.
self induced vomiting, or engaging in laxative or diuretic abuse, or excessive exercise. Um, Another eating disorder that is kind of new in terms of our diagnostic criteria, but not new in terms of the symptoms, is what
Mhm.
we call binge eating disorder. So a lot of folks usually, okay, well, what's the difference between binge eating disorder and bulimia nervosa? Well, binge eating disorder is characterized by those binge eating behaviors, again,
Mhm.
excessive amounts of food, short period of time, where those individuals feel can't control themselves when they eat, and they experience the guilt and the shame and the sadness, and just feeling really negative about themselves, but they don't necessarily have the compensatory behaviors such as the self-induced vomiting or purging in other ways, like abusing laxatives or diuretics. So those are probably the most common. Actually, binge eating disorder is the most common eating disorder out of all the eating disorders.
Wow.
And then you have some that, we really don't hear about, such as ARFID, which is avoidant restrictive, food restrictive and intake disorder.
Mhm.
So what ARFID does is you really have restrict food intake because maybe you are a picky eater, or
Mhm.
maybe you don't like certain texture
Mhm.
food,
Mhm.
maybe there may be some trauma associated with certain types of food that make it really anxiety provoking
Mhm.
foods, and that can often into having lower weight or poor nutrition, other medical conditions,
Okay.
and poor medical outcomes. So that's
And
ARFID.
what is it called? AR, how do you spell it?
ARFID,
Got
avoidant
it.
restrictive food intake disorder.
Gotcha.
Yep. So again, you're avoiding or you're restricting because either a trauma, anxiety, texture, or just lack of interest of food.
Mm.
And then you have things like pica, people eating things that are just
Yep.
non-food items.
Yep.
So eating, dirt or
Mhm.
other sorts of things
Mhm.
can be a feature of people. having, issues with like iron deficiency.
Mhm,
Or
mhm.
I've worked with children who have just had food insecurity, and because they didn't have access to food because of neglect, they may
Mm,
have developed eating disorder patterns consistent with pica. So lots of different kinds of eating disorders. And I think what's important to know about all of these eating disorders is that, we define them by the amount of that they cause in everyday life. And again, that usually is either they're not getting adequate nutrition, or they're losing a significant amount of weight. But the reality is you don't necessarily have to have a low weight. And I think that's important to recognize too. Again, we go back to, you guys all close your eyes and think about what you see when you think of an eating disorder patient or individual with an eating disorder. We think thin.
right.
Well, the reality is you can be all these sizes too. So you can be overweight, you can be a normal weight, you can be underweight. So don't discriminate when it comes to weight size.
Mm.
Also, they can impact all genders. So I've worked with football players, boys, African American boys, dealing with eating disorders,
Oh,
bulimia
wow.
and anorexia nervosa,
Oh,
wrestlers, different kinds of athletes. I've worked with individuals who are struggling with um, just feeling like they don't belong in their body and wanting to transition into another gender and feeling stuck, and then
mhm,
engaging in eating disorder behaviors to
mm,
prevent the development of breasts or
mhm,
development of a period, right?
mhm,
Because they just don't feel, they're like, that's not me. I
mhm. I
don't
don't want that.
in this body. So the
Mhm.
eating disorder is a way to perpetuate that. So
Wow.
it can impact anyone. And of course, thinking of Black individuals, other people of color,
Mhm,
absolutely, we struggle with eating disorders, but we tend to deal with them in silence because of
mhm,
stigma, because of shame, because of a lack
mhm,
of understanding.
mhm,
It can be really hard sometimes to pick up on individuals who are representing other marginalized communities, because
mhm,
again, if we are biased as clinicians, right? Like you said, you've only experienced working with a couple of individuals, so
mhm,
then we may not even ask or
mhm.
search, right, for those disorders in our clients. So that's an overview.
Yeah, no, that's
There's a lot
wonderful.
to answer.
Yeah, that's what we need. Like, we really want I want people to walk away from this knowing, right? Because a lot of people are gonna listen to this and start thinking to themselves, "You know what? That sounds like so and so in my family." Or, "I've been dealing with this." And like you said, the shame part, I think the shame part is a real big part of it. It's like this thing we do, and we'll talk about us as Black folks,
Mhm.
where it's not exactly the same, but it's sort of similar. So if you're a Black person and you can't dance, or right? You ain't got no rhythm. Do you know what I mean? Or we used to tease my mom because of how she was, God rest her soul, but because of how she had a flat butt. And we used to tease
Oh,
her, right? Be like, "Oh, mama, girl, that must have been that. That's the other side when Massa was in the court, right? It was awful that we would do it, but we were like, that ain't the Black side." And so it's like there are parts of us as Black people where we make these real, probably not so healthy assumptions about what it means to be Black.
yeah,
And if you don't fit those assumptions, then there's something wrong with you. And you certainly, especially if it's something that's less visible, then you really don't. Well, now that I come to think of it, this new thing with the body types. I don't know about when you were young, but when I was young, a big butt, that wasn't cute, right? Nobody won't check it for that except for brothers, right? But once you got outside of the sort of Black circle, it was like, ugh. And you remember you were little, but so Mix a Lot,
oh
right?
yeah,
Right, baby got back, and people were like, "Oh my god, her butt, it's so big," right? We could probably all say it, right? "Look at her butt." But now it's like, no pun intended, that's the shape, right? So
right.
you have people who will go out and literally engage in dangerous behavior to get a big behind. So I guess all of that to say that we have these really warped ideas about what it means to inhabit the bodies that we inhabit as Black people. You and I were talking a little bit about that before we even started taping, and I wonder to what extent when you encounter Black patients, we don't have to talk about no specific case, but when you encounter Black patients who
Mhm.
or clients who are struggling with eating disorders, how that shame, I just feel like it manifests, and you said it manifests itself. And I'm just wondering, I don't know if is there anything you can educate us about how do people identify this in their children if the kids are doing it and the parents don't, how would they know? Like, I don't even know how you would know because the shame makes people hide stuff like this. I guess that's my question.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, shame, right, causes us to just, like you said, it causes us to hide and it causes us to suffer in silence, right? And what we know about eating disorders, again, because of our own assumptions, I've heard so many Black patients tell me, okay, but what do you mean I have an eating disorder? Like that's a white girl disease. Like Black people don't get that. I've heard parents me when I have diagnosed their children, like, I think your daughter may have an eating disorder, but she's Black. Black people don't have eating disorders. Like I've literally heard those words from so multiple families, and I think when you're seeing um, images of people who are struggling with a certain disorder and they don't look like you, I think that's why representation matters,
Mm,
right? Because you begin to think, okay, what's wrong with me
yep.
that I'm dealing with this, right? If
Yep.
I'm struggling with
Yep.
body image
Yep.
issues, we don't really talk about that in the Black community much. And
Nope.
actually, as you said, we tend to be, I've noticed in the Black community, sometimes we're a little bit more outward about
Yep.
when somebody doesn't have a big butt or this,
Yep.
or, ooh, gain
Yep.
some weight,
Right. Right. You
at
too
Thanksgiving.
skinny. Why you so little? They need to feed you. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. So we hear it all. And I think it can to when somebody is really struggling with that body image and they're dealing with disordered eating behaviors, they just begin to internalize it. And I think that also goes to not only, what's going on individually, but I think racism plays a
Mm,
big role in that too, right?
come
When
on
we
now.
think about the idealized sense of beauty and how that's defined, and it's a westernized ideal of body, right? That to be and that's beautiful, be white, that's beautiful, to have blonde hair. So, I think for some individuals, depending on the communities they find themselves in, they may begin to internalize that racism and believe that they need to change their bodies. I mean, I remember working with a young lady, about 15, and she was in a private school, one of the only Black girls in her school, and she didn't feel like she fit,
Nope.
and looking at her body, she felt as though it was just different. People would make fun of her
Yep.
sometimes and bully her. And it didn't really start out intentionally. She actually
Right.
ended up being depressed.
Mm,
As we know, one of the features of depression can be a loss of appetite.
that's right.
Loss of appetite, she started losing weight.
Yep.
And next thing you know, she starts to, find that, oh, wow, people are making comments like, oh, you look good. What did you do? You
Mhm.
look great.
Mhm.
And then,
Mhm.
that's reinforced this ideal that, oh, I need to be thinner to be accepted. I need to be thinner to be liked. I need to be thinner to fit in and assimilate into this all white culture that I'm in. So she found herself continuing to lose weight to the point where it just got out of control and it turned into full blown anorexia nervosa.
Mm,
And I think we just don't think about that, how racism can impact the development,
yep.
can actually precipitate sometimes
Mm,
eating disorder behaviors in Black communities. So I think those are, when we talk about shame and guilt,
yes.
and
Yes.
we have to also think about racism and how that contributes to it.
Ooh, girl, you preaching. You just no, seriously, because I just I that just I don't even know why, but that just like really spoke to me. Is this integrating this idea of racism and discrimination and how it can be a precursor to this stuff, because we don't talk about that. And this is why these Black and brown families need a Dr. Dzirasa, because you're the person who can connect the dots. Like they're not, so many times, like my kids, when we lived in North Carolina, we lived where you are currently. And our kids were in private school. I ain't gonna say which one. It's the only one in Durham that everybody send their kids to. And I knew just from like my daughter was there when she was like kindergarten and first grade. And after first grade, I was like, I gotta get her out of here because of what you said, like as early as first grade. So she had done preschool at Duke Children's Campus, which we really love because all the staff was Black. My babies had like 35 aunties. They used to braid my son's hair when, you know what I'm saying? They would feed my kid, give my kids extra snacks, because there's not too many little brown babies in there, but they had love, a lot of love. And then they went to that next school with a lot of their friends they had done preschool with, but all their little friends was preschool was white. And so you get to the new setting and it's a whole new ball of wax. And so I can only imagine what it would have been like for her to stay there, because she still
Right.
sees some of the kids on Instagram and stuff, and even some of the two or three children of other children of color who are not black. And I just look at those kids and I think to myself, because I know it's that's like I grew up like that with like in predominantly white environments, and there's so much pressure. And I think for a lot of us, I'm gonna own it for me as a black parent, we move into these settings and put our kids in these schools thinking that it's going to be better for them. But what we forget is what you just said, that we have to provide so much reinforcement around them so that they don't lose themselves, because every day they're walking into school and people are, look at, ooh, her butt is so big. Do you know what I'm saying? Oh, why she got a, now it's a Kardashian butt, right? It used to be a black butt, now
Right.
it's Kardashian butt. Why she got that Kardashian butt? You know what I mean? And so, or even if they don't say anything, when you go swimming with your friends
Yeah.
and you fill out
Mhm.
your bikini and they don't fill out their bikinis in the same way, then it's like, what, And so I don't know if you can give us some tips. I'll say what I try to do for my daughter is I try to make sure that she sees mommy be proud of mommy's body, right? So mommy's not always 100% happy, but I'm always working on it. And I'm always just saying, look, this is the body God gave me. Honey, we're going to make this work. Do you know what I mean? And I'm cute.
That's
And I'll tease her. I'll be like, girl, I look good. I don't know what you're talking about. Shoot. Right. I'm a Gen X and I look good. And so just like trying to
thank you too.
encourage.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Just trying to model for her body
Yeah.
positivity and acceptance of my black body, because I'll say to her, everybody says we're twins. I texted my girlfriends a picture of me in this dress that I wore like 2019 October. She put the dress on the other day because she got inducted. I got to brag, inducted into the National Honor Society. So she had the dress on, right? Yeah, and it was my dress, right? Yeah, whoop whoop, black girl magic. And what I said, I took a picture, and this was all, she didn't know this is what I was doing, but it was all to reinforce for her. I was like, oh, girl, look at you. You look good. You look just like me in that dress. And I know I look good in that dress. Just to like sort of keep reminding her that that shape of that body is beautiful. Right. And I tease her. I said, girl, people pay money to have a body like that. So can you educate us a little bit about how can we as Black parents and parents of color or guardians or people who have young people in our lives, what can we be doing to undo some of the negative messages that our kids get about what they look like?
I think you raised up such a great point, right? They're always watching. They're always watching. So we have to be careful of the behaviors we are modeling when it comes to our youth. And we may not necessarily say things about their bodies, but guess what? They're watching how you treat your own body, right? They're watching when you are making negative statements about it. I mean, we live in a very like diet culture society, right? So in January, we're all bombarded with like Jenny Craig and Weight Watchers. So they are hearing comments when mom or dad are saying, oh, I can't eat that unless I go work out and do XYZ. Or, oh, I can't eat that because that's a bad food. That's not healthy. So it really is, how do we help them have a healthy relationship with their bodies to be, like you said, body positive? But we have to model that for them, right? So if we
Yeah.
notice things about our body, how can we embrace those things, right? Like
Yeah.
I love this. I'm accepting this. And yeah, it may not be perfection, but that's not really the goal either, is to have a
Amen.
perfect body. It's
Right.
just embrace our body, realizing that we can't be in anyone else's body but our, how can we show ourselves love and appreciation, right, and gratitude for the bodies that we do have, how we honor our bodies and show that to their kids, right? So
Oof.
I think that's important. I think our relationship with food, I hear a lot of judgment talks, and I think that is huge, right? When, again, when we're judging our bodies, like, oh, this, I need to lose weight here, I need to do this. Kids are listening to that, and then they're looking at themselves like, oh, do I need to make any changes? Mommy
Yep.
thinks she's bigger and I have a bigger tummy than her, so that must mean I'm fat,
Yep.
right? So what
Yep.
language are we using? Are we using the word fat? That has a lot of judgment associated with it. Are we talking about foods in a healthy or non-healthy way, right? Or can we help them have balance and say, yeah, there's absolutely a time when we need to celebrate and have cake. Cake isn't bad. Like, but you
Yes.
have
Cake
kids,
is not bad. Right.
right? And I
Right.
think because of the obesity epidemic,
Yeah.
unfortunately, we've been putting so much of an emphasis on that and teaching our kids, even in school, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, this
Yeah.
is healthy, this isn't healthy. This,
Yeah.
you need to count calories. So now we have kids, sometimes I've seen kids second, third, fourth grade with
Oh,
full-blown eating disorders.
no.
Their brains can't comprehend what they're learning in school, and they're learning,
Ugh.
"Oh, this is bad, so I just can't eat that," right? So they just cut those foods out altogether.
Oh my
So it's
gosh.
also teaching them how to have balance, it's not about good or bad foods, healthy or unhealthy foods, it's about having a good relationship with food, right? So and then
Wow.
the same
Yeah.
thing with body, we don't wanna encourage them that, okay, they have to work for their food. It should be
Right.
that, right? That we wanna nourish our body so that we can do all the amazing things. So we could dance and hula hoop and, play
Right.
sports, right? So we wanna look at that from like we need the nourishment rather than I need to work out so I can eat. That's
Mm.
backwards. So we
Oh,
really
I love it.
pay attention to our language, pay attention to, the messages that we're sending, even when we're not telling them directly. And the other thing you mentioned a little earlier, how do I even know what they're struggling
Yes.
because they could
Yes.
be so secretive? I think having
Yes, please.
conversations, having
Okay.
those conversations.
Okay.
What do you think about your body? How do you see yourself?
Mhm.
What's your relationship with your body?
Mhm.
And taking notice too. Are they spending a lot of time in the bathroom? You may start to notice a shift, right? As they get to high school, middle school, they're like, I don't care. In high school, it's like
Right.
we gotta iron our clothes and well, maybe
Right.
not now in the pandemic.
Girl, now. Right. But I know what you mean. Yeah, of course. Right. Right.
Right, but are you seeing a shift in terms of the type of clothing that they're wearing? So sometimes individuals who are dealing with eating disorders, they may not want tight clothing on. They may wear baggy clothing because they don't want to feel, what they call, being feeling fat, or they don't, want to see themselves in baggy clothes. Maybe tighter clothes feel uncomfortable for them. So any kind of changes in the kinds of clothes that they're choosing. They're spending a lot of time in the bathroom,
Mm.
especially, think about purging
Mm.
behaviors that can happen after meals. So if you're noticing you're disappearing after a meal and they're
Mhm.
quiet,
Mhm.
things, patterns, that we want to really be on the lookout for. And then of course,
Mhm.
we really want to make sure that they're seeing their pediatrician and making sure we're checking up on their growth charts, that they're developing in the way that they should be. Missing periods, that's another
Mm.
thing.
Mm.
Maybe they'll start their period but they'll
Mm.
they'll miss it for a few months or even
Mm.
longer. That can be an indication. So there may be little signs that they may be struggling, but I think it's up to us to be nosy and to create a safe space essentially
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
our children and our youth to just be open about what it is that they're experiencing and how
Oh,
they see
wow.
themselves in the world, how they see themselves
Yes.
in school.
Yes. Oh, I love all of that. It's such good advice because if I could like crunch it all down to one really important nugget, and that is communication. You
Yes.
have to have open lines of communication with your children, and you can't wait until there's a problem to start wanting to communicate. Now, if you have waited, that doesn't mean you don't try, right? I don't want people to get the impression if I haven't started, that means I can't. No, no, no. You can start at any point, but I think it's always about just making sure that our children and even our teenagers, right? Even if you got grown youngins, right? Mine are teenagers, but when they're grown, I hope that we have established enough open lines of communication that they feel like they can come to me because they go to college. If they go to college or they move out of your house and they're working or whatever it is that they're doing, or they take a gap year, they don't call it a bridge year, they call them bridge years now. You take a bridge year and they're traveling or working or doing whatever, you still want to be in a position where you have open enough lines of communication that as things change, if they change, you're aware. So I just love the advice. So y'all heard the doctor saying she a doctor, y'all. She a doctor, so she understands. So I want you to really, I hope that you will really take in what she's saying about how important those open lines of communication are and how you communicate yourself as an adult in a young person's life or as an older sibling. You got younger siblings, right? Because I see Dr. Dzirasa like my baby sister. I want our people who are modeling for our young people, whoever you are, to make sure that we're conscious of how we communicate about food. So I love this idea of there's no good foods or bad foods. There's just really what is our relationship to food, and we want it to be healthy. And I love the idea of perfection is not the goal. And what I always try to tell people is your body is perfect for you. right? That you're the only standard that you need to meet. And so and to me, like, having had a parent pass away and I had an uncle pass away recently, I think it might have been COVID related. I think what I always come back to is every moment that we get to be here physically on this planet is a gift.
Yes.
Right? And so we wanna honor I love what you said about, like, honoring your body, honoring who you are, honoring your person, honoring your life. It's a gift, and so we just wanna honor that in the ways that we take care of it. So I wanna say just shifting gears a little teeny bit, you said silence at one point. I don't even remember what it was a reference to, and the first thought that came to mind was Shanti and Silence to Shame and yoga. So I want to talk a little bit about like how we use our bodies, in these really healthy ways. Can you talk a little bit about your experience? I know you're a certified yoga instructor. She Black, y'all. She let Black people do yoga. Come on now. Black people have eating disorders and Black people do yoga. So she's Black Girl Magic with her certification in yoga. And just tell us a little bit about that journey and teaching exercise classes and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's so funny because I so judged yoga.
Girl, we all did, girl, but I love it. But before I was like, girl, don't nobody Black do that. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. And I think part of that was going back to even what we've said about eating disorders. If you Google yoga and you see images that pop up, you're going to see a certain body type. Usually it's a white woman doing yoga in all kind of flexible positions, usually
Size
very thin,
zero, size zero or size two. Right.
super flexible, doing like crazy poses, and I didn't see myself as belonging in that kind of community. So I
Yes.
never really explored it. I never explored
Yes.
it because I just thought that's a community that doesn't exist for me. Like that is
Yes.
there, I would have no sense of belonging in that
Yes.
space. Well, there was a yoga instructor here in Durham, and she had created an amazing space of just a lot of people of color, introducing hip hop and other music into the flow. So I decided, okay, there's a live DJ. I'll go, kind of check it out, see what's going on. And I just fell in love with it. And I think as a psychiatrist, understanding the value of body movement and how important that is in terms of prevention and coping with anxiety and stress and depression and all the other mental conditions that we can struggle with, and seeing also the mindfulness component of it, I was like, wow, okay, this is actually really great, not only physically and getting stronger, but also as a mindfulness practice. And at that time, I didn't even realize I was dealing with anxiety. But yes, I was dealing with anxiety, and I felt like the yoga was helping with it. And I was like, wow, I just feel a lot calmer and more zen. And for me, it was funny because I love body movement, but I've always been more into like cycling or lifting weights and things like that. So I was like, yoga. But I fell in love with it, and I started teaching shortly after starting taking yoga classes. And the goal in doing that was really because, again, I didn't see people who looked like me in the yoga space. I didn't see pictures, right? And again, representation matters. So I think I would have probably tried it a lot sooner had I been exposed to environments with other people who look like me and where I felt like I could relate to it more. So I figured, okay, if I'm going to do this, let's do it so I can do it my way and create safe spaces for other people so that they can feel welcome and not feel like they have to look a certain way or that they have to be at a certain level of fitness or flexibility before they engage in it. To say, hey, all bodies are able to do this practice, and it can be really calming. It can be, empowering. I like power yoga just because I feel like the strength get out of that. Feel like you can conquer the world, and you have a Zen too, so it's a nice. But I really wanted to be able to contribute in that way. So yeah, it's been really cool. I sometimes will partner with other organizations, and I had the honor to partner with Silence the Shame, which they're doing amazing work in terms of breaking down stigma and shame when it comes to people of color and Black people seeking out mental health resources and getting treatment. And so that for me is like the perfect combination, right? Of what I do and what I try to accomplish. So yeah, that's what yoga is for me. So it's a nice balance. And again, I think when we're thinking about eating disorders and how we want to see our body in the world, we want to honor our bodies and take care of our bodies. Well, I think yoga is a really great way to do that. And making sure that we are, just being in our body. First of all, I think we don't even have the awareness because we're going. But I think it's nice to just kind of pause, to stop, and to be present in your body, and then to show appreciation to your body and to show your body that honor that I was talking about earlier. Yeah.
So, it just really excites me to hear you talk about yoga, to hear you talk about power yoga, to hear you talk about, anxiety and how the yoga is a way to help bring all of that down while at the same time allowing you to like build strength. Cause I think sometimes when we think about yoga, I know me, I'm gonna be honest for myself, it's like zen and calm, right? And so I'm like you, I need some weights in my hands. I do this. I always talk about him. One day I'm gonna meet him. His name is Phil Whedon. His website, or sorry, his like handle on Instagram is the gifted one with the number one. He does step aerobics. But
Oh,
girl, today I did it right before we started recording. Today he played some old school. It was all old school. He had the Beastie Boys. He
okay.
had my posses on Broadway, her mix a lot. Girl, I was like, oh yes, girl, I was loving it. It was awesome. And then he had one more that just like kind of sent me through the roof. He played Paul Revere by the Beastie Boys. And of course, I'm generation. I know that like word
Yeah.
for word, like with like the whole thing. So I'm like trying to keep up with my steps, but that's to me, that's exercise. You know what I mean? And so I don't always look at yoga as something that's giving me exercise. I always sort of want to look at yoga as something that's bringing me down. But what I love about what you said is that yoga can be something that does both. It can
Yeah.
give you the peace and the zen, but it can also give you a strong workout. And I feel like what could be better? Like at the end of it, you're invigorated, but you also have peace because you spent this time like
Hmm.
killing out. So I just love that you do that. I love for our young women and men who are of color, they get to see someone that's beautiful and chocolate is you out there doing it. Like it's just, no, it just means a lot because you're right. So I have this obsession with this one yoga clothing brand. I'm not going to say it because I'm about to say something bad about them, but like I rarely do I see brown models in their clothes and I love their clothes. And
Yeah.
rarely do I see anybody bigger than a size 4,
Right.
right? Like rarely. And
Yeah.
so
Hmm.
there's another clothing brand that I like, Aloe Yoga. They have women of all different, and girl, I'm like obsessed with their clothes. It's like so bad. They have like all different sizes of women. Even when I look on their website, I
Hmm.
see different sizes of women. Now I wish I saw more. I would love to see a lot more, but it's the fact that the representation in size, in color, in shape, do you know what I mean? That's there. And there's one, I think her name is Jessamine. Everybody knows her,
Yes.
right? That's it, right?
Yeah, she's actually from Durham.
No,
Yeah, she's based
really?
in Durham.
But
Yeah.
she's awesome, right?
I've
So
taken
she
her
does.
classes before, and she is so amazing. She's so dope, and she's just unapologetic. She's like, "This is me. This is who I am."
That's
And
right.
yeah, she also has really shifted, I think, the yoga culture, right,
Yes.
so that people feel welcome. And that's
Yes.
the thing. We want to create spaces where people feel like they could see themselves in that space, and they don't have to feel ashamed of who they are,
Yes.
you know?
Yes.
I think
Yes.
she creates that, like, come as you are, be who you are. It's not about where you are fitness wise or flexibility wise. Just show up,
That's right.
and we can accommodate. We can make it work no matter what size you are.
Yes.
Felt that every size is beautiful. And
Yes.
I love her because she's just so confident in who she is, and I think she
Yes.
empowers so many people,
Oh,
people of color, Black women of color, Black men of color,
yes.
trans, queer, like all
Yes.
genders. I mean, she
Yes.
really is doing some amazing work here. So
Oh, that's so cool that she's in Durham. I had no idea. I just, would see her and she like just blew up. And I'm just like, good for her because everybody needs to see themselves reflected in that way. And like you said, the thing I love most about her, she is totally unapologetic. This is me,
this is
take it or leave it. And I really don't care. Do you know what I mean? But if you want to come in here, you want to come in and get some of this goodness that I'm offering,
okay.
come on in. Right? Oh, I love that. And I love that you've been able to like do classes with her and like engage in that way. I think that's awesome. So I want to say, Dr. Dzirasa, thank you so, so much for spending time with me, for sharing your time, for being a light to so many people, right? To your patients. I know they probably all tell you, but I'm gonna say it too. For these young Black and brown people out here, it's so important to walk in a room and see you and know like, oh, I can just breathe, right? Or to have somebody who can talk to a parent of color and say, yeah, I think this might be an eating disorder. And even when their response is, oh, but Black people don't do that, you or brown people don't do that, you have an answer. You can say, well, yeah, right? Because them looking at you gives them, I think, a level of trust that they might not have otherwise. And so they're able to hear it in a different way. So Black doctors matter. I have to like
Yeah.
say it is so important. And HBCUs matter because Spelman made this woman, HU made this one. And like, right. So
Good
it's
combination.
just right. So it's just so important that you come from that space. And then I have to say, you had your Doc McStuffins moment. So whoever that woman was when you were 5 years old and you were a little baby Doc McStuffins before there was one, God bless that woman because she puts like planted a seed and you made that seed grow. And now you are the person who is planting that seed for a whole nother generation of these young sisters and brothers out here. They can see themselves in this space too. So I thank you so much for spending time with me. And before we go, please tell us where can we find you, learn more about like your yoga practice. Where can people go to, I don't know, like watch you do a yoga class or join a yoga, sign up for yoga or get clinical care if they happen to be in that area and you all are taking patients? Where can they find you?
So you can find me I'm on Instagram at Dr underscore E2K. Because, Erica with two Ks.
There you
And
go. I never knew that.
oh,
I didn't know that's what that was. That's so funny. Wow. I feel like a dunce. Okay, I got it. And the number two, right? The number two.
yeah,
Got
number
it.
two.
Okay. Okay.
And I'll be launching soon a business called Black Body Beautiful, which is really to highlight and to provide awareness around eating disorders in the Black and Brown community, to help people find resources. But really, we just want to get these out there. And this is, thank you so much for this platform because I think the more we talk about it and people realize like, oh, I struggle with that, then they feel like they can seek help for it, and I
Yes.
think what you're doing is with this podcast is amazing. I've watched some of the episodes and you really are breaking down barriers of stigma so that people can get the help that they need and not feel ashamed about it, not feel cautious, like, oh, should I do this or should I not? But to say, hey,
Do
look,
it.
there is help out there. There are people out here who are trained to help you. You don't have to feel bad about it. You can seek help if you need to. So
That's right.
we at Catalyst in North Carolina, we are in Durham, North Carolina, but we are providing virtual resources. And I'm there. There are a couple of other psychiatrists. We have another therapist who is a woman of color. And, we just want to make sure that people understand that they can reach out to us if they need some additional resources. And there are lots of resources in other communities, and I can give you some of those, Dr. Alfiee, but I think NEDA has the National Eating Disorders Association. Again, Project Heal, which is helping to break down barriers. So like finances, healthcare, systemic barriers to accessing eating disorder treatment. And they have a healer circle. We're working on building people of color, so providers of color, and building them into that network. And then, of course, Therapy for Black Girls is a great resource. So there are resources out there to help you if you
Yes.
are indeed struggling with eating disorders or disordered eating behaviors. So may not necessarily
Mm.
meet full criteria, but you still
Mhm.
may be struggling in some way. So, so I'm so glad again for this opportunity to share a little bit about what I'm passionate about. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, girl, you are so welcome, Miss Spellman woman. You are so welcome. So I got to shout out your sister. Stacey Abrams went to
Yeah,
Spellman, right? Yeah. So we got to
Stacey
shout out.
Abrams, yes.
Yes. The
Right. The
queen girl.
alumni of Spelman College and NFU, and how we just kind of took over to the
Why?
city and to the
Yeah,
middle of
girl. Girl.
Stacey
Right?
Abrams. Yes. So Georgia. Georgia turned Spelman blue.
Yes, honey,
Yes.
honey, honey. Yes, yes, it did. Yes, it did. So thank you so much. And I am just so deeply grateful for your time. And of course, as always, I'm wishing you nothing but continued success. And we'll look forward to tell us the new business that's going to launch again, because I got an exclusive.
Black Body Beautiful.
Black Body Beautiful. Is that right? So we're going to be on the lookout for that and very supportive. And thanks so much, Dr. Dzirasa.
Thank you.
So there you have it. That's a wrap for another episode of Couched in Color. We want you to know that we deeply value you, all of our viewers and our listeners, and everyone out there working to support optimal mental health, both for themselves and for our young people. And one of the best ways you can help our movement is by leaving us a 5-star review on our YouTube channel and everywhere you enjoy your audio podcasts, and by sharing our podcast with a friend. Please also tag us while you're out there listening and watching. Finally, head on over to dralfiee.com for more information about me, www.acomaproject.org for information about my nonprofit, and those are the places you can go to learn more about how you can help. So I'll see you next week. And until then, I'm going to say what I always say, which is that I'm wishing you lots of love, lots of light, and that I'm hoping it is always, always informed by good, culturally relevant science. Take care.